Hello, this is my number 8 Cirkut camera with kind of a poor instruction manual, just meaning it's torn, but it's complete, and a complete set of the gears. There's already a gear engaged in the bottom, and the winding key is here. There's no lens installed right now on the lens board, but this is one that I have with it that is compatible. It's a 13.5-inch lens with a whole series of different manufacturer names on it, including Century Camera, Kodak, Bausch & Lomb, Zeiss, and I just have to screw it back onto the board. All the mechanism is in pretty good shape. It's a little dirty in a few spots. You could use a cleaning up, of course. The leather straps, maybe a little bit of cracking here, so I don't use them to lift the camera up just in case they fail. The back focusing plate here. And in the same kit, I have an extension rail, but I think this must belong to a different camera, and several almost 5x7 cards, but they don't seem to go with this camera either. They're quite a bit later in age, and it seems like this would take an 8x10 slide as opposed to a 5x7. I've got it wound. I've put a gear in there arbitrarily. I haven't bothered matching it because I don't have a lens. I'm not actually focused on anything. But you know, there's your focusing there, and depending on whether you have a 9-inch focus lens or a 16-inch focus lens, and where you're focused, it'll tell you which gear to choose to screw into the bottom right here. And I'll show you what it looks like once you turn it on. Oh, I've got the exposure speed set right now at 1/5 of a second. The way the camera works is that you put your spool of film in here. It'll take either 6-inch spools or 8-inch spools. Then you wind it onto the take-up drum, and as the camera rotates, the image that gets painted through a slit onto the film moves this way at the same speed the film moves against it, and so it's only exposing a slit at a time, and so the slit is a piece of film, as it passes the slit, the way the speed the camera is going is only exposed for 1/5 of a second. And you can make exposures from a 1/2 second to 1/12 of a second, which of course aren't fast sort of exposure times. They're not shutter times, because of course the shutter would remain open for the entire exposure, and there's a mechanical shutter in front of the slit that opens as soon as you engage the gears and closes when you disengage the gears and the motors. And so of course you can adjust the aperture of the lens as another control of the exposure. So I'll engage it and you'll see what happens here. And you can allow the camera to swing through as much of a circle as you want, and then disengage it. And the mechanical shutter will have shut to protect the film, and then you would close the shutter on the lens as well. You might as well. And then I don't know all the other tricks about how much you'd advance the film for the next, or even how you do that before you start a new exposure. I also don't have a very good feel for how many exposures you can do on one wind of the battery. right now, with that particular gear that's in there, I can't directly access the spot to wind it, but you can slide this back on the tripod a little bit, and I can disengage the gear, and now the camera, because the gear is disengaged from the tripod head fixed gear, the camera can freely rotate. And this is how you wind it. It's just a mechanical motor, a spring-driven motor. That's a simple task. And there's what the gears look like. They all have a thread, of course, that fits into the same spot there, and depending on their diameter they change the speed that the camera rotates relative to so that the image is moving across the film at the right speed, and that depends upon focal length and the subject distance. So there's a few other parts about this that are interesting. To get the film focused to start with, you use the focusing back and not the motor back, and this comes off. It can be a bit tricky. My tripod is missing the rigid connectors that you would use there. There's the slit, and you can see that's the mechanical shutter. And when the motor runs fast, of course, when it's not driving the system. And this, the focusing back, goes on in the same way. Once it's sitting at a 45-degree angle and seated in, it's kind of like a bayonet mount. And when there's a lens in place, an image will of course be projected onto the ground glass and you'd focus appropriately. Then choose your gear set, making sure your tripod is more stable than mine. That's when you take this guy off again. There's a little release right here on this top corner, so that comes off. Then you re-engage this. The whole assembly on the back swings open. A couple of hidden releases here. Again, this is the controller for the mechanical, the film plane shutter, as it were. This is where you put your empty spool. Now it's very dark in there. This can move up or down to accept different sizes of film, 8 at the bottom, 6 at the top. This is the drum that picks up the film. So once that's closed, and once you've got yourself focused, and once you've selected you've wound your motor and you've got the appropriate gear set, again I'll just take this gear arbitrarily. Oops. The gear screws into the bottom, and then trying to keep the system relatively centered, you slide that forward until the two gears engage, and then tighten the screw down to pull the camera down tighter to the tripod. And again, we're all ready to go. We've opened our lens shutter if there is one there, and away you go. This is the kind of camera that takes a panoramic photo, very, very long, skinny photo. You can make it longer or shorter depending on how far you let it rotate. But a very common type of photo to see in these is like a picture of an army regiment or something like that. And one of the things that's interesting about that is they look like they're all sitting in a straight line, but really the group is in a circle, sitting around the camera. So everybody's the same distance from the lens, so everybody's in focus, everybody's head's the same size, and you can get a great sweep of people all in one. And if they're sitting in nearly a full circle, you can do a trick of letting the camera come around the whole way, and you get the same people. You get person A on both ends of the photo. I've seen that done a couple of times.